everyone. Welcome to the Community of Human and Organizational Learning webinar this month for the month of November. I want to welcome our guest speaker today, Bill Cafiero, who will be your presenter on mastering effective communication skills. My name is Bob Latino. I am on the board of the co-learning, and I will be your host today. I also want to acknowledge that we also have my cohort in crime, LaRonda Julian, with us as well, in case I mess up.
Good morning, everybody.
And behind the curtain, the green curtain, is the Wizard of Oz, Jessica, who without her, you would not see or hear any of us. So I do want to make some notes here, is to say that Bill prefers to take questions as you have them, so that they're fresh in your mind. You can either raise your hand using the icon at the bottom of your screen, which says react, or you can unmute yourself and go ahead and ask the question yourself. I'll be watching the chat, so if you want to quietly go ahead and put something into the chat while it's fresh in your mind, I will politely interrupt Bill and ask your question. I think I mentioned the raising of your hands because I just learned how to do that. So that's the way. I know Bill's going to have an interactive session here, and some people are a little introverted and want to use a hand versus going ahead and using the unmute. So with that, I will quit taking up Bill's real estate time and go ahead and let him kick it off. Take it away, Bill.
Yeah, thanks for joining us. I really quickly want to go through my history. I'm sure many of you don't know me, but I started in automation. I made a costly error just out of school and was terrified by it. And I think that kind of set a tone for my career. And I became concerned about error proofing our code I worked in biotech. And then I moved to deviation investigations, and I specialize in human-related events. And so I got like really cool and interesting stuff. I bailed out a lot of union folks from being written up. I don't know how much I was appreciated on the management side. That might have had a little bit to do with why I was laid off. I had somebody drop $7 million down the drain, and when we got through it, it was great. But when I got started in the deviation management, I actually attended one of Shane Bush's classes, and then I came back and there was like a $2 million error, and I created some training, and that's kind of how I got into training about 10 years ago. And in 2020, I basically, I did a lot. I got a lot of my courses virtual. I was all over the place. I think I was in like 14 different countries. I had people from 14 different countries, so that was fun. And then I led a human performance team, and basically we were disbanded, and I was told that by someone from senior leadership that leadership was not mature enough to have human performance. So let me go right into the goals today. And by the way, for anyone who's interested, I didn't mention I got a degree in IO psychology, but one of the things we learned about adult learning is that if you don't give your objectives very much up at the front, you lose your audience. So I want to review the evolution of communication just because I think it's interesting to see where things came from and how things developed. I want to talk about like what people actually prefer in communication choices. Really like a lot of focus on the power of words, and how to have meaningful exchanges, and then sort of some neuroscience. It's how our brain gets us in trouble. And maybe help you rethink the way you communicate. So why communication? This is a quote from James Hume's presidential speechwriter, right? And of course, you know how the joke goes, right? Our manager said we have a communication problem. It was the first thing he communicated that the team actually understood. So after I got laid off, I got into my own company and I started doing consulting, and I saw a lot of resistance to hop or whatever you want to refer to it as. And, it was like senior leadership would not support it. There are opinions that it would lead to lawlessness, low levels of accountability, which is quite the opposite. They didn't see the return on investment. Some people saw it as extra work, and some people said, "Oh, wait, we do that already." So the biggest thing was like a leadership lack of understanding, and basically it came down to is the culture does not support it, right? And that was the biggest roadblock, right? So if you get the culture, everything's going to be fine. So what's culture? Like, does anyone want to jump in and say what culture is? It's okay. Or you could put it in the chat. I don't know. But I think people really misunderstand, right? Like, okay, so it's not the expired yogurt in your fridge, but it's not the mission statement on the wall. The authentic culture is what the people are whispering right after the meeting ends. So let's talk about human performance culture, right? So, because what I found is like people were interested in human performance, but maybe I could help them set the culture, and then maybe later on they would be interested in human performance culture. So I kind of divided it up into 6 pillars to support it. Like if you want to do the visual here, and
Hey, Dale, I just want to get, you did have some responses where
okay.
Chris gave you shared beliefs and values, and LaRonda said norms and values.
Yeah, and right, absolutely that fits right into the definition. And so like applying that definition to human performance, and human and organizational performance culture, like what would be the pillars that support it? So in my mind, communication is number one. Resilience is in there too. And by the way, like I have 6. There's probably 12, and I think some of them are intertwined. But I think that's kind of where safety, because safety is really about resilience. Psychology and neuroscience is really important. And that's why I pursued a psychology degree. Just culture, I think, is in there, and then we can talk about accountability and psychological safety, which is big now. Unfortunately, leaders will ask me, "Oh, can you talk to my staff to make them psychologically safe?" And it was like, "Well, actually, I need to talk to you to tell you how to do it. You're the one that they need to hear from, right?" And then team cohesion, right? And team cohesion is just working together and realizing common goals. We can achieve that through things like team building and stuff like that. So now to our feature program, mastering effective communication skills. And what I just want to say is this is the advanced thinkers edition, right? Because this is basically a 45-minute presentation that was condensed from a 2-hour presentation that was condensed from a 4-hour presentation that was condensed from an 8-hour workshop. So, I'll touch on some things. I just think that I think everyone, and they'll be different, not the same, but everyone will take away a few good points from this, and think about it. So, just talk about the history of communication, right? So, before there were spoken words, there was just grunts and gestures, right? And then there's spoken words, and it's kind of like, oh, did you see who's walking upright today, right? And then like in it was like 500 BC, you have the first postal system, right? They didn't have junk mail yet, so it was just bills and stuff. So newspapers came along, and it was hello, New York Post, page 6, gossip column, right? And the Telegraph came along, which was basically just texting with soundtrack. Interestingly, the first video conference was in, I think it's like 1927, yeah, and that is, it didn't really take off because it was 2 guys in the same office. It's kind of like texting someone at the dinner table to pass the salt, right? And then email comes along in 1971. This is the greatest invention ever. We'll never have to have a meeting again. We can just have an email. And then, spam is another great thing, junk mail, speed of light. And then, we get into later on in social media. And you can unfriend someone with a click now. You didn't have to say anything to them. And your public page really makes it great for your prospective employer to think about hiring you. And then finally, we got into the Zoom era where it really took off. Then conversational AI. And if you don't know what that is, just ask ChatGPT. So, but if you look at things like video conferences in 1927, and like we didn't really start using them until really COVID is really where they took off. I mean, we did use them at where I worked anyway. So the early days, right? Gestures, facial expressions, grunts, and vocal tones, right? And that's, it's all still there. Like those are all meaningful to us, but like things kind of went like this, people couldn't talk because they would think, and, we never talk. Is she pointing at me like that again? So, but let's fast forward, right, to the 2020s. Let's talk about methods, right? George Bernard Shaw says, the single biggest problem in communication is the illusion that it has taken place, right? So this is an aggregate, so it's really from a number of different surveys, but I think it's interesting to look at what we found. And we're going to talk about communication preferences and then split it into two categories, personal versus business. So actually, personal, in person is one of the highest, is preferred. And when you go to business, it's actually email. When you go, another thing personal is text is up there. You see around 40% from these surveys. So these numbers are aggregates. They're not going to add up to 100%, right? Chat, instant messaging is like second in business, a high level. Mobile video call, so it'd be like a FaceTime or like just a regular call. 15 to 30% preferred. Video calls are like 10 to 15%. A PC video call in a personal space is like 5 to 10%. Collaboration tools. So what's a collaboration tool? If you're wondering, it's like, I'm talking about like OneDrive. So like that's communication, right? You put a document up on Word and then somebody puts comments on it. So that's like 10 to 15%. Email and personal is low. It's 5 to 15%. And are these preferences? So that's actually, Jessica, that's actually a good question. There was a time, I'm not going to say the name of the company, but it rhymes with work. And we were told that like if we were having any kind of sensitive conversation, that they didn't want instant message or emails. They wanted it over the phone. And that was like a time when we had really moved away from using the phone. Like when I started working, email was like the best way to get in touch with someone, or I guess no, it was phone, and then it was email, and then it became instant message, and then we really moved to everything being documented, and they didn't like that. So I think litigation is definitely a factor, and then business in person is only like 5 to 10%. I think that's also more about opportunity now because we do so much remote working rather than preference. I think that's why you see the big difference. Of course, then, smoke signals is less than 1%. Mental telepathy is, much less than 1%. And then, coming in at the bottom is snail mail, much, much, much less than 1%. So like that discrepancy, I haven't really dug into it, but I think it's about opportunity. But like, what's even more important, right, is if you choose what you say, but like, are you going to get a response, right? That's because if you don't get a response, right, I come from the Italian background where it's better to be hated than ignored. You want to make sure you get a response. But speed is also a factor. So looking at that, instant message is seconds to minutes, and likelihood is about 75 to 85%. Text is minutes to hours, likelihood is about 85 to 90%. In person, synchronous, of course, and likelihood is about 95%. And, sometimes people just walk away or they don't hear you, so it's not 100%. Phone, synchronous. Here's an interesting one. The aggregate is like about 25% of the time. We're talking about known callers. We're not talking about unknown callers. People answer the phone. People don't like to answer the phone. Yes.
This is Bob again. You did have a comment from Mike Petrowski. where do meetings fall in a business environment on your previous slide where you had the two columns?
Well, so I think your meetings, like I think that falls under, they could fall under in person, because the meeting is the actual communication, but the method for doing it could be in person, it could be. So if you're asking what the breakdown is I again, there's like that 5 to 10% that prefer meetings in person. It's they're kind of built into it. I don't know if that's a good answer, but
Yeah,
um,
thank you.
and then email is days. It used to be minutes. And it's 30 to 60% based on content, and I'm not talking about spam here either. It's like, but you have like you could talk about a meeting invite, you could talk about like just like I don't know, some kind of announcement or something like that. It really depends. And then snail mail, we'll wait for that to come in. But it's days to weeks, and it's about 5% response rate. So it's good stuff to know. But like really what I really want to talk about today is language, right? And I'm not forget about trying to commute with somebody who doesn't speak the same native language. Like that's a whole nother thing. I mean, but yeah, like I'm talking about words, right? And words kind of are the quote is from Antoine de Saint-Exupéry, as a French poet. Like words are the source of misunderstanding, and we've done it's just a lot of work in psychology and IO psychology and philosophy and organizational behavior and human performance on words and communicating. So like mid 20th century philosophers on words, right? So Wittgenstein. He talks about like how meaning comes from how people use words, not from static dictionary entries. And the meaning of a word is its use in the language. Um, and then Austin in 62 writes his work, which was actually really a series of lectures that he gave in 55. Um, and they laid the groundwork for organizational communication theory, and I think for a lot of human performance. And I'll get to that in a second. But words are actions that require understanding, that require context, who says them, to whom, and why. So does any of this sound familiar to anyone? Like, have you heard this from stuff from anywhere else? Because I know you have. I don't know. Again, I know sometimes people don't want to jump in. I don't see any messages, so I will just go to it.
You did that, Bill. You did have Chrissy who says yes. I don't know if you'd like to expand on that.
Oh yeah. Did you? Well, put the answer up, but yeah, if Chrissy, if you want to expand, is that what you're thinking?
Sure. Yeah, I've definitely heard about um, the importance of words and the impact that words can have. One of the quotes that I heard in a previous job from a colleague was words build worlds. And I really liked that because it's like the words that we use and the language that we use really helps us understand like what is possible and really helps us understand our environments that we're working in.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
Quote, yeah. Um, let's take a look at just compare two great people, Austin and Conklin, right? So Austin says the meaning of a word depends on circumstances of utterance, right? Conklin says to understand what happened, we must see what made sense to the people at the time. Austin says acts work only under proper authority, context, and mutual understanding. Conklin says safety learning works only if we understand the social and procedural context shaping the behavior. Austin says words do things: promise, apologize, command. Conklin basically says the same thing, but his examples are blame and motivate and silence and learn. So it's pretty, you see these similarities, 50 years later. And I think, these gentlemen, Austin and Wittgenstein, gave a great insight into the beginning of human performance, at least the communication aspect. So let's talk about, right. So Austin wrote the meaning of a word as it's used in the language, and then Decker in the Field Guide to Understanding Human Error emphasizes that words like error, violation, safety gain meaning only through how people use them in the real work context, right? And so the quote of the day to take away, and I attribute this to Decker, and I hope I'm right. Is the meaning of words lies with the people and not in the dictionary. And so I'll give you an exercise, and like normally we would kind of do a much more interactive version of this, but if there were no single word for how you blank, how would you explain it? Like, so I don't know, does anyone, I'm gonna pick the word tired. Does anyone want to like explain what tired is to them? Uh, what would it mean? Like if there were no single word? Don't want to put well, no single word, Laurent. Come on, you're cheating.
LaRonda threw her hat in the ring and says fatigued.
Yeah. But like, so for me, when I'm tired, my eyes burn. Um, so but like, what if someone said, "I feel tired"? Like, what does that feel?
Well, you have a few coming up now, Bill. The feeling of unfocus related to lack of sleep,
Yeah,
sleeping.
so unfocused. I think like, like I said, for me, my eyes burn when I'm tired. I don't know like that I've never no I don't think I've had anyone say to me, "Oh yeah, that's how I feel." So like what does it mean if someone says they're tired? What do you need to do to support them? Like what do you need to watch out for? Like that's kind of um being mentally and physically drained. Yeah.
Ken Madsen had his hand up. Ken, did you want to unmute?
Yeah, so I've done this activity before, and like how I described being tired was I'm lacking the energy to focus or perform physical activities, and it's limiting my ability to succeed. And so all of that goes into stating tired. But
Yeah.
then as you get into each individual person, they have different symptoms of tired for their individual.
Yeah, I mean, like crankiness, I think like that's a common thing, but not everybody feels that. Some people are they're too inattentive to be cranky. But that's kind of like, it's a good exercise to go around and do with words. Anyways, so we'll do like kind of do some games here. Maybe have a little bit of fun, as much as we can do in the virtual format.
You did have one more from Katrina that said body functions begin to shut down as if feeling without fuel.
Good description. Great description. I'll just show this little clip, which I think is really pertinent to our discussion today. Past it.
Careful, this plate is extremely hot. Thank you. I just told you it was hot. Why'd you touch it? I just wanted to know what your idea of hot is.
So we play this game called Wavelengths. And the way Wavelength works is one person or one person secretly gets a number, and it's on a scale of 0 through 10. And it could be like two opposite ends. It could be like coldest and hottest, or boring and exciting, or dangerous and safe. And so, I have this number, and I need to give a clue to describe something that sort of fits with that number. So, like, let me just give you an example here. So I have a number, right? And 0 would be the coldest and 10 would be the hottest. So I have this number, and I'm going to give an example. And my example is coffee. All right. So if I have a number, where does coffee scale from coldest to hottest? What do you kind of take some stabs at what my number is?
Assuming it's not iced coffee.
Well, I mean, like that's actually a great point. Jessica says 7, 7, 7, 4, 8, 9, 8. Okay. All right. So the number's actually 5.5. Okay. And for me, like when I think hottest, I think the sun. And for when I think coldest, I think like absolute zero. I don't even think about the Arctic. So like I'm way beyond. But for some people, I had a guy and we played this game, and you kind of hit on it, Bob. He said he said 3, and I said why 3? He says, well, I only drink iced coffee. So it really, the point is that like our definitions are different. And so, all right, so where am I going with this? Okay. So get a group of managers and workers together. All right. And play this game. Procedures. 0 is the best written. 10 is the most difficult to follow, right? And then give the workers a number and have them, or give the managers a number and have them list the procedure that represents that number. And for argument's sake, like the number here is like 6.5 or something. But it doesn't really it doesn't matter. Like we would play the game with different numbers. But the point is that you will see. Okay, so we did this with like operating system, and it was like 8 being the hardest, right? And or software. It was not operating system, software. And the word they gave was Microsoft Word. And like I just don't think of that as hard. I use it a lot. But when we did the follow-up exercise, we got like a really good explanation as to why they feel like Word was the least user-friendly.
Bill, you had a chat from Katrina that says managers will always overrate the procedures every time. I was going to interject with that too, is to say you have to look at procedures from a use standpoint versus a regulatory compliance. They may be well written for the lawyers, but nobody has any idea how to use them.
Right. And so like there's like actually a follow. So actually with the coffee though, somebody said 4. I don't know if you wanna. I was just curious. That just popped back in my head. Why did you pick something lower than 5?
Let's see who that was.
I'm coming off mute. That was Ken. I picked 4 because coffee's a happy hot, right? But you can get too hot, and that's when you start getting into something else. And ice cream would be a happy cold, so that would be a bottom 3. So on that linear scale, based on the green face you have above, it's comfort.
We get it. That's definitely. I definitely get your interpretation, and it totally makes sense to me now that I talked to you about it. But like if I didn't see it, and like from the perspective of a professor grading a paper and say that, oh, there's, this is terrible, but actually it makes perfect sense. So the next thing I would do is when we talk about exchanging words, right? And John Marshall, former Supreme Court Justice, which is one of the earlier ones, is to listen well is as powerful a means of communication as to talk well. And Jeff Daly, two monologues do not make a dialogue, who's a professor and communication trainer, if you don't know who he is. So when we talk about uh, conversation and exchanges, you think of it like the exchange, the metaphor is like throwing a lump of clay, right? So you toss it to someone, but when they catch it, it changes shape a little, and then they toss it back and it changes again. And each throw reshapes it based on their hands, their perspective, their interpretation. And by the time the clay has gone back and forth a few times, it's really no longer what each person originally held. And it's sort of a shared creation, and it's shaped by, people's assumptions, contributions, clarifications, not misunderstandings. So my goal is to talk about, and we're not going to resolve this in one day or 1 year, even. Like, how do we try not to shape the clay? Like, how do we accomplish it? How do we have that toss and gently catch that and not put too much on it, right? So, so bias is like a big issue. So, Loftus and Palmer were two psychologists. Probably many of you have heard this, but they basically had a hypothesis that language could alter memory. And I was talking to a friend of mine because they're eyewitness accountant who's a lawyer, and he's like, "Geez, I wish they taught this in law school." And so Loftus Palmer, they basically they asked people to estimate. They had them watch videos, and they asked them to estimate the speed of motor vehicles using different verbs for different groups that watch the same video. So what is it? What does it look? So they basically they say, well, how fast were the cars going when they smashed, when they collided, when they bumped, when they hit, when they contacted? And you have these groups that were asked the 5 different questions. They all watched the same movie, and sure enough, what do you see that there's like, the gentler the word, the lower the speed they recall the cars going at, right? So really, really interesting how you can do that. So, what is the proper way to ask the question? Think about that, just not to bias the person. And they did a second bias study, and this one was actually more impressive to me. And they had 3 groups. They had them watch videos of car crashes again. And immediately after, they had a control group. They didn't ask them any questions. And then group 2, they said, how fast were the cars going when they hit? And group 3, they said, how fast were the cars going when they smashed? And a week later, they asked these groups 10 questions in random order, with one question being, did you witness any glass breakage? It's all the same questions for every group, but the only question that they were concerned about was, did you witness any glass breakage? Now, what I didn't say yet is that the there was no glass breakage in the videos. So let's see what happens. So the control group, 12% of the people said that they saw glass break. Why do you think? I mean, that's a significant number. Why do you think 12% of the people said that?
Because of the way you phrase the question.
Yeah, because you asked the question, did you see glass break? Right? Like it's like, oh, geez, maybe I was supposed to see that, or I don't know, it was a week ago. Yeah, And when they got to the group when they just said how fast were the cars going when they hit, like 14% of the people. So it's about the same. So it's about the same as the group that didn't have any questions. But here's the thing, right? When they got to the group, remember that they asked them this question a week ago, and they asked them a week ago how fast the cars were going when they smashed. And then a week later, they asked them if they saw glass break. And like nearly a third of the people claimed to have seen something that didn't happen. So their conclusion was yes, language can alter memory. So along comes David Grove, and he develops clean language. So he says, when you ask a clean question, you invite the person to go deeper into their own experience, not yours. So it's a way of like minimizing the influence of the questioner. Every question you ask doesn't have to be a clean question, or it can't be 100% clean. There's been a lot of work done on it. It helps you like stay out of the other person's story and let them walk through themselves. And it carries no advice, no interpretation, no judgment, and it simply opens space. So David Grove devised this in the 80s. Does anyone I remember watching this on the Oprah Winfrey show, of all things. Remember what was going on about psychological therapy in the 80s was a big deal?
No.
So does this that people would have false memories, that they would have these sessions and they would think that things happened to them when they were younger, or and they just weren't. Turns out that they weren't accurate, and it really had to do with the way the therapist was asking the questions. So they designed it originally for psychotherapy, and then they realize it really help the patients to formulate responses. And it's like the polar opposite of leading or loaded or closed-end questions. And it can improve communication on so many levels, like personally, professionally. And it takes, it takes a minute to learn and a lifetime to master. It's one of those things. But there's three types of clean questions. They call them developing questions, and sequence and source questions, and intention questions. You can actually, I didn't put a QR code, but you can Google this and you can find all these questions. I'm not going to go through all of them here and now. What I would explain is, remember the example I gave of the game wavelength, right? And then and it doesn't have to be the manager. It could be the worker going up against the engineer who writes the procedure. And so then, like, I actually have them do a clean question subject, and it starts with, tell me about procedure X. And then the goal is that the person who guessed the number, it asks the questions, and we go back and forth. So there's a number of opportunities, and you can spend hours doing this. But it really do get like understanding. Like for instance, the person that said that word was like very was not very user friendly. I thought that it was a high number. Is you know Clean question him on Word. And you don't know where these conversations go, and you don't know where they're going to end. And a lot of times people sort of discover questions within them. So these are the developing questions, and then there's sequence and source questions. And the if you've ever watched like or listened to court especially like court TV shows, you'll hear the judge say, and then what happened, and then what happened next, and then what happened. Very clean question. Oh yeah, humble inquiry. Yeah. Yeah, minimize assumptions and there's more there.
Yeah, how do you avoid becoming so clean that you lose influence or warmth?
Well, what's the purpose of the conversation? Is the purpose of the conversation to get information out of the other person, or is the purpose of the conversation to instruct the other person? So I think you're probably, if you're instructing, if it's really like like I'm transferring information to you and that's kind of the purpose of this conversation, then you're not going clean questions. But if we're trying to understand each other, then you don't want your influence in there if you're trying to get explanations from them.
I have a follow-up to Mary's post about the warmth. And this is related to your and my work and investigations, but when you're looking at AI these days, that'll be a common complaint, is that whatever you're getting out of it, it lacks warmth because it's a very robotic response that you get from it because it's based on intellect and not emotion.
Yeah.
When you're using clean language, how does that impact what AI is doing?
That's an interesting question. I would have to think about that one. I've worked a lot with AI. I've never asked AI to clean question me. Let's see what that would feel like. AI does tend to throw a lot of uh, talking about clean questions in AI. One of the things I noticed with AI is if I ask AI something in like a leading question, it's like, oh yeah, that's a great idea. It's never said to me that's a bad idea, right? So something's wrong there, right? And AI is actually quite manipulative, and it's really interesting. But on the other hand, like when I ask AI to do something like, update my PowerPoint slides, it's a long way from replacing us. I don't think we have much to worry about there. But what I want to say is if there's, and I probably overuse this question, but like if there's one quite clean question I wanted you to take away from today, and write this one down. It's like, what would you like to have happen? It is such a de-escalator. It's kind of like the antithesis of saying to someone, you need to calm down, which never works, right? When you tell someone, oh, you need to calm down, they usually get more upset. But if you just say, what would you like to have happen? Sometimes they say, I don't know. Sometimes they say something that you can't do, but you at least can talk about why you can't do it. And sometimes they tell you and you can do it and you come to a resolution. So it's a wonderful question. It's a great question. Bias. So, we do not see things as they are. We see them as we are, honestly. Most misunderstandings come not from what is said, but from what is assumed, and that's kind of a combination of Drucker and Shaw. Is not a direct quote from either. Cognitive bias. There's so many. I wish that like we could go through even half of them, but it's already 11:43, and this is like I said, this is a condensed course. But if you just take a look at them scrolling, there's quite a few there. But I'll give it my favorite one is confirmation bias, right? And you talk about asking leading questions, right? So confirmation bias basically says if you look for something, you will find that something, right? So you get you Google sugar causes weight gain, and you get 54 million hits. And you Google sugar causes weight loss, and you get 177 million hits. So it's, like Right. The kind of the clean way, and there's a clean, it's like how is X related to Y is one of the clean questions. So that, the clean question is how is sugar related to weight? And then just to, what, you would find for that. Like that's a clean way to go about it. But you could come out if you only Googled one or the other, you could come out with a strong opinion. Hey, I've got millions of Google pages that support this idea. And so now just talk about neuroscience a little bit. And so a professor at Northeastern, her quote was not exact quote, but the brain's a prediction machine. We communicate through what we expect as much as through what we hear. So we think about like, and this is something, we're not going to talk about, but how to avoid it, but like be aware of that, the amygdala part of the brain that triggers emotional reactions, embarrassments, frustrations. And that's clearly going to affect the way people communicate. Some other challenges that the brain has is just memory overload, selective attention, fast exchanges, prioritizing visual cues over words. Those are all like challenges that we face where our brain is challenging for us to communicate. And one of my favorite things is to talk about is like there's a whole series of reaction that goes on in your brain when you sense an error. And one of the reactions down the chain is to go into learning mode and to go into it just sort of jolts you and kind of stops you and grounds you, but it also puts you into learning mode. Now the thing is, if the brain concludes that the error is not your error, that trigger to go into learning mode does not happen. It's really important to understand, right? And that's really important to be aware of. I think if you're going to do any kind of human performance work, you need to be aware of like, it's right when you jump to that, everybody knows about blame. It's like when you jump to that blame now, the error is not my part. And, they always say blame inhibits learning. So, and the brain does this because it wants to drive to a conclusion, basically. And so like complex conversations, our brain rewards and loves conclusions. And why does it? Because actually it conserves energy. Like it takes energy to, you don't think of it as physical energy, but that mental energy, you're burning fuel to think things through. So we come to conclusions, and that challenges our active listening. At that point, we have this aha moment, and it releases dopamine when we get to that conclusion. So you've had it where you're having a conversation with someone, they're 2 sentences into it, and you've already concluded, oh, this is this is what I want to respond with. Right? So active listening, right? So the biggest communication problem is that we listen to respond rather than to understand. That's attributed to Stephen Covey. And one of the most sincere forms of respect is actually listening to what another has to say. Listening is being able to be changed by the other person. I think that's really, you be open to that. I don't think we're going to have time to do this exercise. I thought we would. Bob, I know I'd asked you for help with it. But I'll just go through it. It's an improv exercise, and it's pretty simple. It's called last letter first. And the way it works is that somebody makes a statement, and then the next person will use the last letter of the last word from the last letter of their first word, as the first letter of their first word. So much better to give an example. If I said I left my wallet home today, then somebody would who went next would have to start with a Y, and they might say yoga is a great stress relief. And then the next person would have to start with an F. Friday can't come soon enough, and the next person would start with an H. So it's I don't know if you want to take a picture of the screen, or you can Google it too. It's called Last Letter First. It's a great improv. But there's a feeling that you have when you do this of like really listening. And you know, if you think about it, what you can't do when they're speaking is formulate your response, because you need that last word. You need that last letter of that last word. So what I see is so what I see is that the sometimes the person, while the other person's sort of thinking, because they get that last letter and they're just, oh geez, what am I going to say, the other person actually continues to talk, right? And so that's another thing, is it prevents you from cutting people off in the conversation, because it pauses you. So it's a really fun improv exercise. Oh, we're not gonna have time to show this video, so I put the QR code up. I'll give you guys like 10 seconds to either take a picture or undo it, but I think it's a great video. Um, uh,
You have about 10 minutes till the top of the hour, Bill.
okay, yeah, I still have a little bit to go, but actually not that much. Um, and you know, remote working, right? That's like another issue. And I do work with people on that. It's like, what are your guidelines? What are your norm? What is your remote work culture? We just were thrown into remote working in 2020, and there was no rule. And I always felt, if my boss in me, that I had to respond right away, because I wanted them to know that I was at my computer. But if I was in the office, I'd be like, well, I'm not going to be distracted. So you check about response times and team cohesions and voice. No one would. You'd be in these long instant messages, and nobody would just can I call you? Like, can we just talk about this? And do you have your cameras on or off? And do if there's a small group of people in the meeting, I don't like them to have mute on, because I feel like it's just another for something that prevents them from getting into the jumping into the discussion. What about multitasking and stuff like that? And then here's goes, like, so which person do you want on your team here, right? Do you want the person that has the camera off? Do you want the person that has like the bottom of their face chopped off? Do you want the person that is looking at their screen but not their camera, or do you want the person that's kind of looking at their screen and their camera, right? And so it's think about that, like how you present, and who comes through as participating, right? I talked about the improv exercise, and improv is just an amazing thing I did, and I work with a professional improv instructor, it is great for team building and communication and psychological safety. You definitely have a shared vulnerability when you do it, and candor, connection, active listening. So, and it really builds teams. I have an article on LinkedIn if you want to read it. There's a QR code for it. I
You have the message from Mike Pertowsi.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. You can find great stuff on there, including my article. And I have like other on my website about workshops that I do, and other things on communications and ideas to improve, and not just communication, psychological safety, and so yeah, there's a QR code that takes to my website. Um, so Peter Drucker, the most important thing in communication is hearing what is not said. So I want to say some of the things we didn't talk about: body language, tone, inflection, order, timing, motivation, power dynamics, like all those things also play a role in communication. So with that, that is my contact information. If anyone has any questions or wants to follow up with me, I'd be happy. Um, Feel free to reach out. And if you know anyone that's interested in this material, let me know. A big thank you to everyone who's participating, and Mary and Bob and Floranda, who I will forever associate with Casamigos. We were good buddies. I think it was at the Virginia conference we kind of connected, and we spent a lot of time together, and I enjoyed that, and I value that. And the other thing is like these are all great people. And if you haven't been to a conference, you need to go to meet them. Because I've met them and I've really enjoyed working with them. So we're about like a couple
Yeah.
minutes for questions.
Yeah, and we want to thank you as well. I can empathize with you about taking an 8-hour course and trying to cram it all down to a meaningful value-added hour. But thank you for using your head down time to make that happen. I do want to go into the chat and give you some questions that are popping up.
Okay.
This is from Mike Petrowski. What are your thoughts on the pitfalls of verbal communication?
Well, my thoughts on the pitfalls of verbal communication.
He expanded on that. He said, I have found that verbal communication can be misunderstood because some words sound the same. In our HPI training, we use imprecise communication habit example by verbally stating written phrases. Go 95 north, go to 95 north. We asked the class, which one did I say?
Yeah. Yeah, right. Like there's so much room for misinterpretation. I mean, the good thing about verbal is that you're there and you can talk and you can question, sort of follow up because it's when I mean all those concerns that you have verbal, if it's written in a procedure, um, you don't have the author of the procedure most of the time. And I didn't stop sharing. But so I think, yeah, I mean, they exist, right? And words, like I said, words mean different things to different people. And so you really have to be very careful. I've heard things and I really thought I was right. And when I talked to the person, totally got why I interpreted it that way.
Okay, Mary says, fabulous, thanks. Spotting my cognitive biases is oddly liberating. And I love the
Yeah,
improv too.
yeah. Cognitive bias is there's so many of them, and they're so you know it's so like a lot of when you get into a lot of this in the neuroscience and stuff, you can't change your brain. Like we're wired to work a certain way, but when you're aware of that, it it gives you sort of the ability to maybe stop and take a step back. Gee, I don't think this is my error, but wait, maybe I still can learn from this, and like that sort of thing. I saw a couple things pop up while I was talking that I missed.
Now, I think that we'll in closing, thanks for the plug about the conference coming up. Next year will be the links are going to be on the website. They should be posted by now, but we do know it's in June. I believe it's the week of the 12th, and it's going to be in Denver this year. And Bill has the honor of doing the last monthly webinar for co-learning because we're going to switch formats to a quarterly format where it's going to be an hour and a half interactive presentation where 45 minutes is the lecture type portion, and then the 45 minutes will be interactive engagement activities. So we'll start that format beginning in February. Outside of that, I want to thank everybody for your participation. I want to thank Bill for taking his time to put this together and to present it to everyone. And thank you all for your time, and wish everybody a happy Thanksgiving and a safe one.
Yes,
So with
Dave.
that, I will go ahead and close. And if you have any questions, just go ahead and contact Cole Learning, and we'll be happy to get back with you, as well as with Bill's material. I believe you have all of his contact info. All right. Happy Thanksgiving, everybody. Take care.